Hello students, this is your English lesson. In this lesson, we are going to read unit number 6, The White Mouse Circus from Oxford Modern English 6. Let's get started. First of all, words to know. Bracing, refreshing, chambermaid, a maid, one who cleans a hotel room. Compromise, a settlement of a dispute in which two sides agree to accept less than they originally wanted. Consolation, a source of comfort to somebody who is upset or disappointed. Relentlessly, never slackening, but going at the same pace. Scuttling, running or moving quickly with short steps. Sidle, to edge along in a secretive way. Tomirot, utter foolishness, nonsense. Wait, to arouse one's appetite. Let's read the story together. This extract is from Roald Dahl's book, The Witches. The story is about a young boy and his encounter with witches. The boy who lives with his grandmother is due to spend his holidays in Norway, but because his grandmother falls ill, they cannot go. Instead, he is taken to a seaside hotel in England. If you have not read the book already, be sure to read it soon. Rooms were booked for us in a place called the Hotel Magnificent in the famous seaside town of Bournemouth. Bournemouth, my grandmother told me, was full of old people like herself. They retired there by the thousands because the air was so bracing, fresh and healthy. It kept them, so they believed, alive for a few extra years. Does it? I asked. Of course not, she said. It's Tomirot, utter foolishness. But just for once, I think we have got to obey the doctor. Soon after that, my grandmother and I took the train to Bournemouth and settled into the Hotel Magnificent. Magnificent, extremely beautiful. It was an enormous, very large in size. White building on the seafront, and it looked like a pretty boring place to spend a summer holiday in. I had my own separate bedroom, but there was a door connected my room with my grandmother's room. Just before we left for Bournemouth, my grandmother had given me as an consolation a present of 2 white mice in a little cage, and I took them with me. They were terrific fun. Terrific? Huge. I called them William and Mary, and in the hotel I set out right away teaching them to do tricks. The first trick I taught them was to creep up the sleeve of my jacket and come out by my neck. Then I taught them to climb up the back of my neck on to the top of my head. I did this by putting crumbs in my hair. On the very first morning, the chambermaid was making my bed when one of my mice poked its head out from under the sheets. The maid let out a shriek that brought a dozen people running to see who was being murdered. I was reported to the manager. There followed an unpleasant scene in the manager's office with the manager, my grandmother, and me. The manager, whose name was Mr. Stringer, was a bristly man, bristly, having a stiff and prickly texture, in a black tailcoat. I cannot permit mice in my hotel, ma'am, he said to my grandmother. How dare you say that when your rotten hotel is full of rats anyway? My grandmother cried. Rats? Cried Mr. Stringer, going mauve, of pale purple color in the face. There are no rats in this hotel. I saw one this very morning, my grandmother said. It was running down the corridor into the kitchen. That's not true, cried Mr. Stringer. You had better get the rat catcher in at once, my grandmother said, before I report you to the public health authorities. I expect there are rats scuttling all over the kitchen. Scuttling? Run horridly all over the kitchen floor and stealing the food off the shelves and jumping in and out of the soup. Never, cried Mr. Stringer. No wonder my breakfast toast was all nibbled round. Nibbled? Take some bites out of the edges this morning, my grandmother went on relentlessly. Relentlessly. No wonder it had a nasty, ratty taste. Nasty? Bad, very unpleasant. If you are not careful, the health people will be ordering the entire hotel to be closed before everyone gets typhoid fever. You are not being serious, ma'am, Mr. Stringer said. I was never more serious in my life, my grandmother said. Are you not going to allow my grandson to keep his white mice in his room? The manager knew when he was beaten. May I suggest a compromise, madam? He said. I will permit him to keep them in his room. Permit, officially allow, as long as they are never allowed out of the cage. How's that? That will suit us very well, my grandmother said, and she stood up and marched out of the room with me behind her. There is no way you can train mice inside a cage. Yet I dared not let them out because the chambermaid was spying on me all the time. She had a key to my door and she kept bursting in at all hours, trying to catch me with the mice out of the cage. I decided to seek a safer place where I could carry on with the training. There must surely be an empty room in this enormous hotel. I put one mouse into each trouser pocket and wandered downstairs in search of a secret spot. The ground floor of the hotel was a maze of public rooms, all of them named in golden letters on the doors. I wandered through the lounge and the card room and the reading room and the drawing room. None of them was empty. I went down a long wide corridor and at the end of it I came to the ballroom. There were double doors leading into it, and in front of the doors there was a large notice board on a stand. The notice on the board said, "The double doors into the room were open." I peeped in. It was a colossal room. Colossal? Extreme large. There were rows and rows of chairs all facing a platform. The chairs were painted gold and they had little red cushions on the seats, but there was not a soul in sight. I sidled into the room. Sidled, walked in timid manner. The meeting of the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children must have taken place earlier in the day, and now they had all gone home. Even if they hadn't, even if they did suddenly come pouring in, they would be wonderful, kind people who would look with favor upon a young mouse trainer going about his business. At the back of the room there was a large folding screen with Chinese dragons painted on it. I decided to go behind this screen and do my training there. I wasn't a bit frightened of the prevention of cruelty to children people, but there was always a chance that Mr. Stringer might pop his head around the door. I tiptoed to the back of the room and settled myself on the carpet behind the big screen. What a splendid place this was! Ideal for mouse training. I took William and Mary out of my trouser pockets. They sat beside me on the carpet, quiet and well behaved. The trick I was going to teach them today was tightrope walking. It is not all that difficult to train an intelligent mouse to be an expert tightrope walker provided you know exactly how to go about it. First, you must have a piece of string. I had that. Then you must have some good cake. A fine currant cake is the favorite food of white mice. I had brought with me a raw cake which I had pocketed the day before. You stretch the string tight between your two hands, but you start by keeping it very short, only about 3 inches. You put the mouse on your right hand and a little piece of cake on your left hand. The mouse is therefore only 3 inches away from the cake. He can see it and he can smell it. His whiskers twitch with excitement. He can almost reach the cake by leaning forward, but not quite. He only has to take 2 steps along the string to reach this tasty morsel. He ventures forward. Ventures a risky journey. One paw on the string, then the other. If the mouse has a good sense of balance, and most of them have, he will get across easily. I started with William. He walked the string without a moment's hesitation. I let him have a quick nibble of the cake just to whet his appetite. Wit sharpen. Then I put him back on my right hand. This time I lengthened the string. I made it about 6 inches long. With superb balance, William walked step by step along the string until he reached the cake. He was rewarded with another nibble. Quite soon, William was walking a 24-inch tightrope, or rather tight string, from one hand to the other to reach the cake. He was enjoying himself tremendously to a very great extent. I was careful to hold the string near the carpet so that if he did lose balance, he wouldn't have far to fall, but he never fell. William was obviously a natural acrobat, a great tightrope walking mouse. Now it was Mary's turn. I put William on the carpet beside me and rewarded him with some extra crumbs and a crunch. Then I started going through the same routine all over again with Mary. My building ambition, you see, my dream of dreams, was to become one day the owner of a White Mouse Circus. I would have a small stage with red curtains in front of it, and when the curtains were drawn apart, the audience would see my world famous performing mice walking on tight ropes, swinging from trapeze, turning somersault, an acrobatic movement in the air, bouncing on trampolines, a piece of equipment consisting of a string fabric sheet connecting by springs to a frame, and all the rest of it. I would have white mice riding on white rats, and the rats would gallop furiously in extreme anger, round and round the stage. I was beginning to picture myself traveling first class all over the globe with my famous White Mouse Circus and performing before all the crowded heads of Europe. Now come to the exercises. Comprehension. Answer the following questions. A. What reason did the grandmother give for going to Bournemouth? Answer. The grandmother decided to go to Bournemouth in order to obey her doctor's orders. B. How does the boy describe the hotel? Answer. It was an enormous white building on the seafront, and it looked to me like a pretty boring place to spend a summer holiday in. He describes the hotel as the ground floor of the hotel was a maze of public rooms, all of them named in gold letters on the doors. C. Why had the grandmother given the boy a pair of white mice? Answer. The grandmother had given the boy a pair of white mice as consolation because Bournemouth was a boring place. D. What was the first trick the boy taught the mice? Answer. The first trick the boy taught the white mice was to creep up the sleeve of his jacket and come out by his neck. E. Why did the hotel manager get angry with the boy and his grandmother? Answer. The hotel manager was angry with the boy and his grandmother for suggesting that the hotel was full of rats. F. What made the boy confident that he had found a good place to train his mice? Answer. The boy was confident that he had found a good place to train his mice because the bathroom was large and empty. The room had been used for a meeting of the members of the RSPCC, and even if these members were to come into the room while he was there, they would be good, kind people. These questions are more difficult. Discuss them first. G. In what ways was the grandmother a clever and thoughtful lady? Answer. The grandmother outwitted the hotel manager by suggesting that there were rats in the hotel and it might be closed down if this fact was reported to the public health authorities. 2. For each of the following, explain when the statement was made, to whom it was made, and what it refers to. What do you think is meant by each statement? You may discuss each one in class. Try to find other ways of expressing the same ideas. A. It's Tommy wrote. The grandmother to the boy when he asks her if it is true that a place like Bournemouth keeps people healthy. Meaning, it's nonsense. B. They were traffic fun. The boy says this about the mice his grandmother has given him, meaning they are lots of fun. Terrific means of a great amount or intensity. C. The manager was a bristly man. The boy says this about the manager, meaning bristly here means with thick set hair, with a temper, ready for a fight. D. Rats! Cried Mr. Stringer, going mauve in the face. Mr. Stringer, the manager, says this to the grandmother when she tells him there are rats in his hotel, meaning going mauve in the face, getting very angry. E. May I suggest a compromise, madam? The manager says this when the grandmother asks him whether or not they are going to be allowed to keep the white mice in the hotel, meaning the manager is afraid that if the grandmother carries out her threat, there may be more trouble to deal with, so he suggests a simpler solution which will suit both parties. F. The ground floor of the hotel was a maze of public rooms. The boy says this when describing the hotel and his discovery of all the different rooms on the ground floor, meaning there were so many rooms and so many corridors that the ground floor of the hotel appeared like a maze, a place in which to easily get lost to the little boy. B. Working with words. Which colors are used to describe people's feelings or moods? Think of these feelings. Fear, white, ashen, grey, yellow for cowardice. Anger, red, horse, purple, black. Rage, red, purple, black. sadness, blue, sickness, white, ashen, colorless, ennui, green. Here are some words used by the author to describe movement. Use the words in interesting sentences of your own. A. Pop in. I felt something pop in my neck, but I don't think it's serious. B. Bursting in. Bursting into tears, she hid her face in her handkerchief and rushed from the room. C. Sidled. She sidled over and whispered, "Do you see that guy?" D. Marched. She drew a deep breath and marched into the mansion. E. Wandered. For a long time he wandered into fear from place to place. F. Creep. I'll be as quiet as kitten in slippers as I creep up to the bedroom. G. Run. I could not run fast due to injury in my foot. H. Scuttling. I could hear an animal scuttling about in the undergrowth. I. Pouring in. Pouring 2 cups of coffee, she headed for the living room. J. Tiptoed. She tiptoed to the kitchen and peeked in. K. Ventures. He lost a lot of money in a failed business venture last year. L. Forward. He started up the engine and the car moved forward. When would you use these words describing movements? A. Scrabble. Sarah suggested a game of Scrabble after dinner. B. Scramble. She scrambled up and stood on her legs. C. Scrap. She fell down and scraped her knees. D. Wave. Most of the cloth which the natives wear, the women wave in their own homes. E. Stampede. There was a stampede for the exit. Thanks for listening. For new videos, don't forget to subscribe my channel. And if you like my videos, please share and like.